Hey, welcome back. It's a cold one out there, isn't it? I was walking through Prospect Park this morning, the wind cutting right through my coat, and all I could think was, I am not built for this. My blood is still tuned to the warmth of Dhaka, to New York's humid summers. And it got me thinking about a different kind of cold. A cold that wasn't just weather, but a weapon. A cold that defined one of the most astonishing, lopsided fights in history. I'm Ibnul J. Farabi, and this is Flashpoints, the wars that shaped us. And today, we're traveling to the frozen forests of 1939 to witness the day a giant stumbled and a nation of ski warriors taught the world a lesson in defiance. So, picture the map of Europe in late 1939. World War II has just begun. Hitler's Germany and Stalin's Soviet Union, temporarily allies through their cynical pact, have carved up Poland. Stalin, eyeing his northwestern border, turns to Finland. He wants territory, a buffer zone to protect Leningrad. His demands are simple: hand over land, or else. The Finns, a young republic that had only just won its independence from Russia 2 decades prior, refuse. They know what "or else" means, but they also know their land. On November 30th, 1939, the Soviet Union invades. They send over 500,000 men, thousands of tanks and aircraft. Finland's entire army? About 300,000. Their tanks? A handful. Their air force? Obsolete. The world expected a Finnish collapse in days. What happened instead was a masterclass in asymmetrical warfare, a 105-day saga of grit, snow, and tactical genius they call the Winter War. The first, and most formidable, Soviet general wasn't a person. It was the cold itself. The winter of 1939-40 was one of the most brutal in recorded history. Temperatures plunged to -40, even -50 degrees Fahrenheit. And here's the thing. The Finns were prepared for their own winter. Their soldiers were issued high-quality white camouflage, proper skis, and winter tents. The Soviet troops? Many were from warmer southern republics. They were issued standard-issue greatcoats that were useless in that deep cold, and they moved in long, vulnerable columns along the few forest roads. The Finns watched these dark, shivering lines snake through their white forests, and they saw not an invincible army, but a target. This is where the legend of the sisu comes in. Sisu, it's a Finnish concept with no direct English translation. It's a blend of stoic determination, grit, and a kind of relentless courage in the face of impossible odds. And it found its perfect expression in the Finnish ski trooper. These men weren't just soldiers on skis, they were hunters. They would materialize silently from the trees, unleash a devastating hail of fire from submachine guns the world hadn't yet seen used so effectively, the Suomi KP/-31, and then vanish back into the white void. They attacked not the main force head-on, but the support columns in the rear. They'd isolate Soviet units, cut their supply lines, and let the cold and hunger do the rest. They called these tactics mati, the Finnish word for a cubic meter of stacked firewood. They'd chop the invading columns into isolated, surrounded chunks, and then systematically break them down. One of the most iconic examples of this was the Battle of the Rate Road. In January 1940, the Soviet 44th Rifle Division, a proud, reinforced unit, was strung out for miles along a narrow forest road. Finnish ski patrols, moving with ghostly speed, blocked the road at both ends and then swarmed the flanks. They didn't have the artillery to blast the division to pieces, so they created chaos. They'd hit the command vehicles, the field kitchens, the ammunition trucks. In the paralyzing cold, the Soviet division simply stopped. Tanks ran out of fuel and sat like frozen metal tombs. Men huddled around fires, only to become targets for snipers. The 44th was utterly destroyed, its equipment captured, its men killed or taken prisoner. The images of that road, littered with frozen corpses and abandoned machines, sent shockwaves through the world and through the Kremlin. Because while the Finns were winning legendary victories in the field, the sheer, crushing weight of the Soviet giant was beginning to tell. After initial humiliations, Stalin sent in massive reinforcements, eventually over 1 million men. They learned, slowly, to wear white, to use ski troops themselves. In February, they launched a massive bombardment and a renewed frontal assault on the Karelian Isthmus, where the Finns had built a defensive line the world would call the Mannerheim Line. The Finns fought for every inch, but the imbalance was just too great. By March 1940, with their army exhausted and ammunition running low, Finland had to come to the negotiating table. The peace terms were harsh. Finland lost 11% of its territory, including its second-largest city, Viipuri. Hundreds of thousands of Finns became refugees, forced to leave their homes in the ceded lands. On paper, it was a Soviet victory, but everyone who had been watching knew the truth. A nation of 3.7 million people had held off a colossus of 170 million for over 3 months. They'd inflicted staggering casualties. Estimates suggest over 300,000 Soviet dead, wounded, or missing, compared to about 70,000 Finns. They had humiliated a superpower on the global stage, and that humiliation had profound consequences. It shattered the myth of Soviet military invincibility. It's widely believed that Hitler, watching the Red Army's dismal performance against a tiny foe, became convinced that the Soviet Union was, as he called it, a rotten structure that would collapse with one good kick. That misreading of the Winter War's lessons, attributing Soviet failure only to weakness, not to Finnish skill and the nightmarish conditions, was a catastrophic blunder that helped lead Germany to launch Operation Barbarossa in 1941. Stalin, for his part, learned a brutal lesson. He purged his incompetent commanders and began a massive, desperate reform of the Red Army. The Winter War, in a very real sense, forged the army that would eventually stand at the ruins of the Reichstag in 1945. For me, Ibnul, an engineer by trade, the story of the Winter War is a powerful case study in system design. You see, the Finns didn't try to build a bigger, clunkier version of the Soviet system. They couldn't. Instead, they optimized their entire defense for their specific environment. They used terrain as a force multiplier. They prioritized mobility, flexibility, and local knowledge over sheer mass. It's a reminder that the most elegant solution isn't always the biggest or the most complex. Sometimes, it's the one that fits the problem perfectly. It's about knowing your own landscape, your own strengths, and having the sisu to trust in them when the world says you're destined to fail. Finland emerged from the Winter War battered, diminished, but unbroken. Their fierce resistance preserved their independence, a prize they would fiercely defend again in the continuation war. They proved that can, for a time, hold back sheer weight. That a nation's spirit, hardened in the deepest cold, can become its most unbreakable defense. So the next time you feel a bitter wind, maybe think of those silent shapes on skis, gliding through the pines, defending their home not with the resources they wished they had, but with every ounce of cunning and courage they possessed. They turned winter into their ally and wrote a legend in snow. If you found this story of resilience and tactical brilliance compelling, I'd be so grateful if you'd share this episode. Tell a friend, leave a review. It helps others discover these hidden stories from history. For more deep dives into the conflicts that forged our world, make sure you're subscribed to Flashpoints wherever you get your podcasts. This has been Flashpoints, the wars that shaped us, a production of Light Knot Studios. Visit us at lightknotstudios.com. Until next time, stay curious.